In my list now, I see 38 participants that really exceeded our list from a few days ago. So again, welcome to the next gen component of the 27th PECC General Meeting 2020. It's very heartwarming for me to see a lot of participants from a diverse set of countries. We see participants from Canada, China, Australia, and a number of more countries. So my name is Muhammad Sinatra. I'm an analyst in foreign policy and security studies, ISIS Malaysia. And together with my colleagues here today, I'll be one of the facilitators for the next gen component. So just a bit of introduction for everyone. This next gen component is an integral part of the PECC General Meeting that we will have for the next few days. The point of this interaction is just to ease the young participants' transition into this sort of like track 2 conversation that we will have today and also the last day of the general meeting. And if we see at your backgrounds, there are a diverse set of backgrounds that I'm looking at right now. We have professionals, we have government officers, we also have academics and a few students, if I'm not mistaken. So this track 2 component hopefully can really facilitate this diverse backgrounds to have an easy conversation with each other. So that's really our aim. Our format is usually very open, sometimes very informal, but we're always trying to maintain a semblance of dignity in our conversations, especially if we are dealing with government officers in our meetings in the past. So without further ado, I would first invite His Excellency Ambassador Don Campbell to deliver his welcome remarks. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
You guys had me muted there for a minute or so. First of all, I would like to welcome everybody to this virtual conference. I would like to thank ISIS Malaysia and the Malaysian National Committee for organizing this conference in these rather extraordinary times. We all would have preferred to have been together in Kuala Lumpur, but we all know the circumstances make that situation impossible. I'd also like to thank the next generation participants who are taking the time to involve themselves in this conference. The next generation component of the PECC General Conference and Standing Committees has been a feature for the last several years, and we've had quite a number of people from member economies who are next generation. In other words, people who are much younger than the average age of people who have traditionally been involved in PECC. And the purpose of this, of course, has been to provide you, the next generation, or really the current coming generation, with an opportunity to learn, to participate in the policy discussions, and also we're very much looking forward to your viewpoints and your contributions and your thoughts as you involve yourselves in the General Conference. And we have a wrap-up session which the PECC National Committees are very much looking forward to on Thursday. I'm delighted that we've got, I saw it, my last count was 21 next generation people participating from 10 different economies. And in these circumstances, I think that's very good. PECC itself, of course, is a striking example of what we call track 2 diplomacy, which is the topic of your discussion today. PECC was founded before most of you in the next generation were born, because it was 1980, and it was founded as by some very leading figures in Asia as a non-profit, policy-oriented and regional association which was dedicated to a prosperous and a stable Asia Pacific. And over the last 40 years, of course, some of the issues remain very much the same. Some of the issues have changed dramatically, no more so than in the last year or so. But having said that, we have made tremendous progress as a region over that period. PECC itself has brought together thought leaders from business, from government, from academic institutions, and in more recent years, the important role of civil society and media in a non-official capacity to discuss the pressing issues facing Asia Pacific, primarily in an economic context. And we have been around to offer commentary, to offer solutions. I think we've had a good policy input with the creation of APEC, which was actually a PECC initiative to start with that led to the creation of APEC. We've become very much the policy advisor, one of the major policy advisors, I guess I should say, to the APEC community. So we're involved in policy inputs, we're involved in debate, we're involved in dialogue, and not unimportantly, we're involved in networking in an unofficial capacity and an informal capacity. And in this region, networking is tremendously important. And those are all things that you in the next generation, as we call it the next generation, the coming generation, I would prefer to say, need to become very, very much involved in. We have 20, we're not identical to APEC in membership in that we have more members. We have 26 member committees. Some economies choose to join PEC and then eventually find themselves into the APEC community itself. And we've offered, we do an annual State of the Region report as one of our signature projects. We've been involved in everything from energy projects to benefits of globalization. And obviously very central to all of this have been the pathways to, the various pathways to a free trade area of Asia Pacific. I think most importantly that we have been building a sense of community along with the other institutions in Asia Pacific. So if I have one hope for the conversations that you're going to have this week, is that it will spark more interest on your part, more activity on your part, more input into the work of PEC, and that we would hope that most of you could become players in the PEC community in building an even stronger and more prosperous and peaceful Asia Pacific in the very challenging years that we have ahead. So again, welcome. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today and over the next couple of days in the General Conference. And importantly, I'll be very much looking forward to the opportunity that you are being provided with for a discussion and a dialogue with the national committees on Thursday. So thanks again, and I look forward to our conversations.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that very encouraging speech. I will now invite Mr. Hugh Stevens to deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Good, good.
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Campbell, Don, who's my chairman from the Canadian PEC Committee, for your opening comments. And thank you in particular to Malaysia PEC for organizing and hosting this important session. As Ambassador Campbell said, I'm delighted to see such broad representation at this next gen meeting, 10 economies, including 3 representatives from Canada. So hello, Julia, hello, Dongwoo, hello, Stephanie. Thank you for joining the group. As Ambassador Campbell said, the next generation involvement with PEC is a really important part of our work. And I recall back a few years ago at the PEC meeting in Vancouver, where I think we had one of the first next-gen meetings. And I'm delighted to see that this has become an integral part of PEC meetings, working around it and integrated with it. And I think the topic today is also very, very relevant, Track 2. Because as Ambassador Campbell has said, PEC itself, by its very nature, is the epitome of a Track 2 organization. So let me just talk a little bit about Track 2 for a few minutes, and I know you're going to be spending the rest of the morning looking at some concrete examples. By its very nature, PEC is a Track 2 organization sitting outside government, which I guess we could call Track 1, but at the same time plugged in and connected to it through various means. And it's interesting when we look at the diversity that is PECC. If you look at the composition of the various PECC committees, they're all a little bit different. They have some similarities, but they're all a little bit different. And I think this represents the nature of a Track 2 dialogue and why PECC is being so successful in many ways. Some of our national committees are directly connected to think tanks like the Malaysia ISIS connection, or to economic research institutes like in Korea, Chinese Taipei, and so on. Others are more private sector or academic research focused. And in some cases there is government financial support, and in other cases not. Indeed, some of the PECC committees are very closely connected with government. And in a few cases, they're even serving government officials, but of course, acting in their own personal capacity in working with PECC, what we might call, I guess, Track 1.5. But what they all have in common is that they provide a platform to discuss and explore new directions, new ideas, and indeed, in some cases, to find ways around problems. And that's really the essence of what Track 2 is. Track 2 is really providing a safe space, if you like, to push the boundaries, but also a platform, again, as Ambassador Campbell said, this is very important for informal networking and confidence building, so that you really get to know people around the region, understand their perspectives. In fact, I would argue if we didn't have an organization like PECC to backstop APEC and other official fora, we'd have to invent one. What I'd like to do briefly in my few minutes is take a quick sort of raison of what track diplomacy is and have a little bit of a look at its history. You can all look this up. For as long as I've been involved in diplomatic work, we've always talked about Track 2, but in fact, it goes back not that long, to about the 1970s. And usually the US State Department's Policy Planning Office is credited with coming up with the concept. And that is the use of non-state actors to explore issues, to create dialogue, confidence building, thinking outside the box, and so on. And it's interesting that initially officials were very reluctant, very resistant to this. Who are these people with the temerity to discuss all these issues that are really the proper domain of officials and so forth? But it's interesting how Track 2 diplomacy has proven its worth, and it's now really an integral part of the full toolbox of advancing policy issues and resolving policy issues. So when is it used? There are really two main areas, one of which is more relevant to PECC than the other. One is the use of Track 2 diplomacy to resolve really difficult conflicts. Conflicts where there's no dialogue. Quite often it's a bilateral confrontation, or maybe a small group of people, small group of issues, countries where things are really at an impasse. And Track 2 dialogue, bringing together the right people to think outside the box, come up with some new ideas, can really help break the logjam. The other area, and this is perhaps a bit more relevant to PECC's work, is socializing new ideas and initiatives that are perhaps not quite ready, not quite fully formed, not quite ready for government-to-government policy dialogues. More issues need to be explored and so forth. But having a forum to test ideas. Quite often, the dialogue may start with like-minded countries and then expand outward from there. What are the conditions for effective use of Track 2 diplomacy? Because just to actually throw a lot of people in the same room and hope that serendipitously things will happen and things will gel doesn't always happen. It has to be well prepared. So I think the first thing, of course, is to define the issue, to have a look at what issues are going to be discussed, and to prepare the background, to prepare it thoroughly with good research papers, well-prepared research papers, perhaps surveys and so forth, to bring some actual collateral to the table, to bring some new information to the table. It's also extremely important to get the right people around the table. So a careful selection of participants, diverse backgrounds, close to government, but not in government. I think one of the reasons for success, for a really successful Track 2 operation, is when the message can be passed back. So you want people around that table who have good connections with government, but who are taking off a government hat or aren't necessarily fully representing their government. You want to bring in new thinking. It's not much of a track two dialogue if everybody's just sitting down there and reiterating past positions. There has to be something new, some forward-looking ideas put on the table. And really key is good sound facilitation. The dialogue needs to be non-threatening, non-confrontational. The conclusions are non-binding, and it's very important that there be lots of listening. People should take off their masks, listen to what others have to say, and work together to find a way forward, and thereby narrowing differences and presenting some solutions. This can be done through a variety of methods, and PEC uses, I think, all of these: workshops, small workshops, seminars, symposia, the commissioning of papers. Even the research of the papers can be helpful because a network can be developed and there can be different inputs from different parties into papers. Surveys of opinion makers. Media is important because part of a successful track two dialogue is also to mobilize public opinion and to raise awareness, and the all-important networks that emerge from it, so that there can be advice, different perspectives shared around the table. A couple of the best known examples of the conflict resolution type of track two dialogue are often cited as the Oslo peace process back in the 90s, and some of the US-China dialogues that took place offline, helping to resolve issues such as the EP3 incident. In the case of PEC, as I mentioned, PEC's strength, I think, is in the socialization of new ideas. And as Ambassador Campbell pointed out, PEC was around long before APEC, and it really fits closely with the way APEC works: voluntary, non-binding, consensus building. I'll give you a few examples of some of the areas where track two dialogue within PEC has led into concrete work and outcomes in APEC, and indeed even in wider circles. Back in the 1990s, PEC worked very closely on a set of non-binding investment principles that were adopted by a number of APEC countries. Again, in the 1990s, there were proposals and there was work done on unilateral trade liberalization, which led to the International Technology Agreement and the agreements, the sectoral agreements on environmental goods and services. These were all direct results of track two offline dialogue sponsored by PEC. More recently and more topically, PEC has been working on the issue of the FTAP along with the ABAC in efforts to harmonize the noodle bowl. And of course, we now have the comprehensive and progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership in place, and RCEP signed just last month. So work continues in this area, and PEC has played a strong role in commissioning studies, encouraging work on the idea of bringing the various tracks together and exploring new ideas. And some more recent examples in the area of connectivity. PEC's project, which I was fortunate enough to be involved with for the last couple of years in terms of defining and measuring connectivity and providing a policy vehicle to officials. And particularly in two areas: digital trade, where the work of Peter Lovelace, looking at barriers and policy issues, and cross-border issues related to data, capacity, and so forth in digital trade, have been very helpful in moving the issues forward. And Jane Drake-Brockman's work in trade and services, which has led directly to positive work in both APEC and the WTO. So that's kind of the background for track two. What are those emerging issues that you will be involved with? Well, you yourself will define that, but a couple of thoughts come to mind. Obviously, we're all living through perhaps the beginning of the end of the COVID period. It's hit some of our economies much more painfully than others, but I think the entire region is looking at post-COVID recovery and the process of how that is done, including things such as the distribution of vaccines and critical equipment, and what kind of regimes can be developed to ensure that there's an equitable sharing of the way out of this particular challenge. For all of you, for all of us, but particularly for the next generation, the whole issue of climate change and the intersection of trade and climate change is a very important emerging topic. And of course, the digital economy and the future of work. The fact that we're all sitting here today in our respective economies, staring at a screen, I think is a perfect example of how things have changed. So your role is very important in terms of moving Track 2 forward, because the kind of thinking that will come out of the next generation will help surface new issues, bring new perspectives. You are more adept than many of us at using the new social networking tools to develop those digital networks. So this is all the kind of refreshing and refreshment of ideas that tech needs. We need those new ideas. We need that infusion of energy, and we very much welcome your participation. And hopefully next year, as much as the digital world is wonderful, it would really be nice if we can all meet face to face. Although I gather that New Zealand, I believe, is actually preparing or expecting that we may still have to do this partially digitally. In any event, thank you, all of you, for taking the time to participate. I hope you find the meeting today useful. I hope you find that the general meeting will be useful. And I look very much forward to receiving your insights on your thoughts and the work that you will be doing over the next couple of days when you report back out to the steering committee of PECC. So thank you for listening, and bon voyage on what's an interesting journey.
Thank you very much, sir, for the very, very, very comprehensive introduction to the Track 2 format. I myself have been in ISIS Malaysia for close to 6 years, and I don't know half of what the history that you just told everyone today. So just to shout out to everyone who just joined us, welcome to the next gen component of the 27th PECC General Meeting. Please bear in mind again that this is the next gen component, and the actual general meeting will actually start tomorrow and Wednesday. So just to give you a brief introduction to what our activities today, we have already prepared 2 sessions that we will go through. The first session is basically the Track 2 in a nutshell. Basically, it's just an introduction to Track 2 format, which I think from the remarks that have been delivered earlier, pretty much sum up everything that we would need to introduce to you about Track 2. And we will also introduce some of the terms and topics that might transpire in the next few days, and think of it as ice-breaking sessions for you to get into the zone and then try to build your thoughts and opinion about matters that would arise. In the next session, we will emulate this Track 2 format in a Track 2 simulation by discussing a popular theme across the region that is relevant to the next generation. We have opted for some options to be raised later, such as socio-economic concerns, increased cost of living, future of jobs and job security, trade wars, limits of globalization, armed conflicts, the pandemic itself, and also natural disasters, climate change. But we will go through that shortly. So the next session will be the introduction, right? So everyone is ready, okay? So let me just start by introducing myself again. My name is Muhammad Sinatra. I'm an analyst in foreign policy and security studies, ISIS Malaysia. I've been with ISIS Malaysia for close to 6 years now. I mostly look at Malaysia-Indonesia relations and also counterterrorism in Southeast Asia. But recently, since the pandemic, this sort of like focus I have to sort of like diversify my focus because new interests and new needs continue to rise with every single day. So I would now hand the space to my colleagues here. Dr. Juwita.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from warm Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. My name is Juwita Muhammad, and I'm a fellow here at the Economics Division of ISIS Malaysia, the friendly ISIS. I would like to emphasize on that. I used to be a Next Gen participant in 2007, and it's great to be here as part of the MAMPAC Secretariat, and I look forward to having an interactive session with all of you today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Calvin Cheng. I'm an analyst here at the Economics Division at ISIS Malaysia. So I've been in ISIS for about 3 years, and currently my focus is on economic development, social assistance, trade, and economic growth.
Hi everyone, my name is Haris Zainul. I'm an analyst at ISIS Malaysia. I've been here for about 4 years plus now, and my main research portfolio relates to misinformation and the integrity of civic discourse, policy responses to misinformation, and Southeast Asian politics more generally. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the conversations today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, friends and colleagues. May I now invite our participants to introduce themselves. Okay, so I will go one by one. Yeah? I'm looking at the list right now, so there are quite a number of you, 42 participants, as a matter of fact. So the first name on the list is Aaron Sohn. Do I pronounce that right? Sorry, can
Yes,
you
that's
introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you. My name is Aaron Sohns, everyone. I'm a researcher at the Australian APEC Study Centre. So my research background is as an economist. I look at regional integration and trade policy. A report I did on Australia's trade with Vietnam is just being launched today. I'm quite excited about that. And yeah, really interested to hear more about PECC and how the Next Gen network can contribute. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. Next on the list is Miss Adelina Chong. Are you there, Miss Chong? No, Miss Chong. Miss Adelina Chong. Okay, so she's probably away for some time. So next in the list is our very own Mr. Darshan Joshi. Darshan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Hi, Darshan. Yeah.
Hide behind the webcam. Hi, I'm Darshan. I just joined ISIS in October of this year. Most of my research work looks at climate change economics, and a huge component of that is carbon pricing. So yeah, looking forward to getting involved in this process and getting to know all of you a bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshan. Next in the list is Bin Nam Pham. Do I pronounce that right? Bin Nam Pham.
Yes.
Hi. Yes. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. My name is Nam, and I'm from Vietnam, and I'm from the Department of Multilateral Economic Cooperation and from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Vietnam. Yeah. So I have a bachelor degree in international business from RMIT in Vietnam, and at the moment I'm working as a desk officer. Yes.
Thank you very much. Next in the list is Darsen Chew. Any taker? Darsen Chew.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I'm a representative from the Darsen Chew. I'm a youth representative, and I'm Chopper. I'm the junior student in the university. And I'm really interested in this topic, the trade too, because I have two different backgrounds. One is the law department, and another is agriculture. So I really look forward to these sessions to have more dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Darsen. I hope our interaction today will be very beneficial to all of you. Next is Dato NBCO, Kian Hao. Dato.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. I am actually representing my chairman, Tan Sri Lim. I'm the advisor to the company, Top Left. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Next is Dayong Lee. Dayong Lee.
Yes. Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dayong Lee. You can call me Dave for short, and I'm a graduate student / researcher and a representative from South Korea. I currently study in Seoul National University, majoring in area studies with the regional focus in Southeast Asia. My economic background lies in ASEAN and Korea's economic cooperation and regional cooperation mechanism within that region. I come from a social science and political science background, so my interest lies in employment, migration, and human rights. I believe that organizations like APEC come to play and play a huge role in these dialogues. So I'm very honored to be here today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Next is Dongwoo Kim.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, wonderful. Like this headphone has been interesting. Yeah, hi. So my name is Dongwoo Kim, and I'm a representative from Canada. I'm a program manager at the Asia Pacific Foundation, where I have been looking at governance of digital technology, especially artificial intelligence, looking into the ethical and social issues. As of September, I've gone down to part-time position at the foundation in order to complete my PhD coursework at the University of British Columbia, where I am researching AI norms, ethics, and multilateral governance. I'm very honored to be here and looking forward to the conversations.
Very interesting. Next in the list is the section of the PECC, Mr. Eduardo Pedrosa. Maybe you can just introduce yourself, sir, if you're around.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. I'm really looking forward to hearing what the next generation has on their minds and what you think we in the Asia Pacific should be prioritizing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gordon Chung. Gordon Chung. No taker. Mr. Gordon Chung. All right, we'll save that for later. Next is Hebi Wong.
Hi all, I'm from Hong Kong, and I'm actually still a student in the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and my major is Global Business and Management, and I'm happy to be here today, and I look forward to the conversation that we'll have later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hyun Jin Kang.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Hyun Jin from South Korea. I think when I saw the list, I was the only person who has a major in health. I'm actually doing my public health degree at the Seoul National University in Korea. I have a pharmacy background, so my interests were solely more focused on the health. But during this time, pandemic of COVID-19, with my specialization in health economics, I got interested in all the governance and the international dialogues. So I decided to join this meeting. So happy to see everyone and expect to have wonderful conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. James, are you there? Can you introduce yourself, James?
Hi everyone, I'm James Toh from Asia New Zealand Foundation. Thank you very much. I work very closely with Sinatra and Juwita and the rest of the Malaysia ISIS team, especially in our regional exchanges. We just had our ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand dialogue a couple of weeks ago, and also on the sidelines of the annual Asia Pacific Roundtable. So my job at the foundation here is to work with next generation to help build an interest and enthusiasm in these kinds of regional discussions. And so today I'll be helping facilitate like a dry run into the events of the next 2 days. So look forward to seeing you then.
Just an extra shout out to Mr. James Toh. His format of the next gen is actually the one that we are adapting for this PECC general meeting. He has done so at least twice or 3 times before for our own events. So thank you very much, James, again for your all of your assistance all this while. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next in the list is Julia Nguyen.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm also a delegate from Canada, along with my colleagues Dongwoo and Stephanie. So I'm currently a project coordinator at the Asia Pacific Foundation, and one of our main goals is to sort of strengthen what we call Asia competence, which are the skills and experiences that we think young Canadians or any Canadian should have in order to effectively engage with Asia. So a lot of it has to do with education, of course, but also exchange of experiences and knowledge. So obviously this topic is really important to me, along with being self-identified youth myself, so I'm really excited to discuss with all of the delegates.
All right, thank you for that. Miss Kathy Chan. Kathy Chan. Anyone? Anyone? Kathy Chan? Not yet, yeah? Okay. How about Miss Lorraine Ashcraft? Oh, Lorraine Ashcraft, Miss Ashcraft.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, I'm with US PECC. I'm work for the National Center for APEC. I'm a policy manager, and one of the areas that I focus on is digital issues. So that, of course, incorporates into a lot of different conversations. So happy to be here and listen along. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus Yu. Marcus Yu.
Hi everyone. Hi, I'm Marcus. So I'm an associate analyst with Moody's Investor Service. So within Moody's, I'm in the sovereign risk group. So I cover sovereign credits within the region, such as China, Thailand, Korea, Malaysia, etc., and as well as some oil-producing economies in Central Asia, like Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. So happy to be here and look forward to learning from all of you.
Thank you, Marcus. Next is who I'm looking at. Martin Delator. Do I pronounce that right? Martin Delator.
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Hello, my name is Martin. I am from Mexico. I was invited by Universidad de Guadalajara, and I'm studying a master's currently. My major is in global politics and trans-Pacific studies, and I am researching about China relationship with Mexico and Latin America. And I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to the following meetings and conversations that we will have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Matthew Castle.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Matthew Castle. I'm coming from New Zealand, where I'm a lecturer in political science and international relations at Victoria University of Wellington. I completed my PhD last year at McGill University, and the focus of my work is on the politics and political economy of trade and economic globalization. And I have a particular interest in the politics of trade agreements. And so the Asia Pacific is obviously a very interesting space in that regard, but I'm excited to be participating and looking forward to learning from everybody.
Thank you, Matthew. Who I'm looking at now, Melissa Tong. Melissa?
Hi, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right, hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa, and I'm from Hong Kong. I'm also a postgraduate student. I'm doing JD. So before my JD, I actually had a business degree in the UK, and made me realize that I still love Asia so much. So that's why I'm here today. So that's why my interest would be a mix of business and law, potentially. So some examples of digital trade, personal data. So one example that I'm looking for is using intellectual property. Looking at personal data is an intellectual property for now, which is quite new. Something else would be energy market, for example, especially in the Southeast Asian market. So looking forward to see what's going on in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Nam Pham. Anyone with that name, Nam Pham? Okay, let's continue, move on to Nan Hao.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Hao Nan. I'm a Chinese representative. This year, I just graduated from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore, and currently serves as a political affairs officer at the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat for China, Japan, the Republic of Korea, based in Seoul. My primary interest is in international economic security in East Asia, and I'm glad to be involved and look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next is from Malaysia, I believe. Nur Jibani. Oh, that's PCC. Sorry. We'll get back to the PCC Secretariat later. Next is Nur Sazali from Malaysia, I believe. Nur Sazali.
Hello, hi.
Yeah, hi.
I'm Suraya, Nur Suraya Sazali from Malaysia. I'm from Khazanah Research Institute. Excited to be here. My research focus is on labor markets and social protections. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Richard Cantor. Richard Cantor.
Hello, everyone. I am chair of US PEC, and I also work at Moody's Investor Service. It's really exciting. It's actually my first year attending a general meeting and getting to see the Next Gen program. So it's a thrill to see all of you, and I really look forward to hearing the outcomes of your deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Cantor. Sergio Humberto Espinoza Cruz.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hello, my name is Sergio Espinoza. I work as a chief operation officer here in Mexico for a consultancy company called Castle Rock Consulting. And we specialize in international trade and public policy affairs. I have, well, my academic background is in international relations, but I have a master's degree in Trans-Pacific Studies and Global Politics by the University of Guadalajara. And my specialization is in Chinese economy. Also, well, I am very excited to share points of view and impressions on modern Asia-Pacific topics with you guys, and of course, also getting to know each other to develop a cooperative network. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Siti Tumin from Malaysia.
Hello everyone, I'm Siti. I'm a research associate at Khazanah Research Institute. I have trainings in economics, and now I am currently working in labor market and social protection issues. In the past, I've also worked a little bit on trade as well as agriculture. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Siti. Sonia Rose.
Hi everyone, my name is Sonia and I'm coming to you from New Zealand.
Sorry, Sonia, can you speak louder?
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Is this better?
Yeah, better.
Yes, sorry. Hi, I'm Sonia. I'm from New Zealand. My current role is at a business association and I'm in the policy team. My work is quite domestic focused. My work is on labor markets, immigration policy and skills, and ensuring that we have skills for the future and business developing in that way. For my work in trade at my work, it's very much about making sure that small to medium business is kept into the conversation and bringing that point up. My undergraduate background is I quadruple majored, and including in those was Asian studies and international business, among other things. And I'm also doing my postgraduate. My dissertation is in sustainable business and in Malaysia, actually. And I'm really looking forward to the discussions that we have. So thank you very much for the opportunity, but I'm mostly looking forward to making new friends, and hopefully I can meet most of you in person when travel allows. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Stephanie Lee.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
My name is Stephanie Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Stephanie Lee. I represent the Canadian PECC committee. I am the program manager for networks and partnerships at the Asia Pacific Foundation. So my background is actually I specialize in natural resources management, and at the foundation, my role is I work with the Canadian members of PECC and APEC, which is the APEC Business Advisory Council, working with them on various topics from climate change to digital innovation. And I'm looking forward to some good discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Tao Nguyen. Tao Nguyen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hello, my name is Thao, and currently I am desk officer at the Department of Multilateral Economics Cooperation in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Vietnam. My background is international economics, and it is my honor to be here today, and I hope that we will have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Yijing Wang. Miss Yijing Wang.
Well, hi everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. All right. So I guess there was a connection loss before, but anyway. So hi everyone. I'm Wang Yijing from China, and currently I'm serving as the project coordination assistant at UNV China, where I'm responsible for sending volunteers abroad. And my research interest lies in public policy and especially public diplomacy, as well as global governance. And I'm a recent graduate from Shanghai International Studies University, and I'm really looking forward to joining the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next in my list is Pak Yose from CSIS. Pak Yose, are you around?
Yes. Yeah. Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Yose. Yeah. I'm Yose Rizal Damori. I'm currently the co-chair of the Indonesian National PECC, National Pacific Economic Council. Definitely, I don't belong to the next generations of PCC, but I'm very happy to be here to listen to the discussion and also hearing about the aspiration that might shape the future of Asia Pacific and the world today. I've been involved in the PCC activities for quite a while. This is actually the first time for me to join the next generation sessions. So looking forward to the discussions. I might not be able to join actively the discussions, but I would be happy to participate later. Thank you.
Terima kasih, Pak Yose. We also look forward to your session tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
We will now turn to the PECC Secretariat. Betty, Zakia, or Noor, perhaps you want to just say hi to the participants. Betty?
Hi, everybody. I'm Betty from the PECC Secretariat.
All right. Zakia, perhaps, or Noor? Or anyone else that I have not mentioned or missed the introduction altogether? Miss Adelina Chong, Gordon Chong, if I'm not mistaken. Kathy Chan, Namfan.
If I could just add quickly, my colleague Sally Parks-McClay is running a bit late. She's just in a meeting with our foreign affairs officials and will join shortly.
Thank you. And also thank you very much to all of you. I know this is like 9:53 a.m. in Kuala Lumpur, but perhaps it's 9:53 p.m. Where you at the moment. So if the introduction round is over, maybe I will invite Dr. Juwita Muhammad to just say a few words, also to handle the next this session.
Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. So we have a very diversified group of young people here. Let me just explain to you what it is expected of you for the next couple of days. So tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we will start with the general meeting or the general conference. So we have set up around 6 panel discussions. And today, what we are trying to prepare you all is on what the topics are going to be about so that you won't be too shocked or too surprised. And then by the end of the meeting on the 17th, which is on Thursday, we would like the next gen group to for the first session of the day on the 17th, we would like you to come together and talk about your impressions and also observations of the general meeting, of the topics discussed, as well as points to improve. Maybe it could be on APEC itself or APEC Track 2. So it's quite broad in terms of focus. So again, on the last day, which is on the 17th, we would like you to come up with a short memorandum. It doesn't have to be long. It can be just a one-pager of all the important things that you can highlight to the PECC members themselves. So again, this would give more of a structure to your discussion at the end of on the last day itself. So when after the memorandum is presented, so again, this will be presented by a leader that is appointed by all of you. So again, please don't be shy to use the LinkedIn platform to talk about who's going to be presenting this on the last day on the 17th of December on Thursday. So again, we're here to learn about Track 2, but we're also here to prepare about the topics that are going to be highlighted in the next few days. So our discussions on those topics will be in the next session, but for this session itself, we're going to be easing you into all of the terms and acronyms. I'm kidding, not all, because then we wouldn't have time for the conference itself. So we have here a diversified group of people. So coming from like some are students and some are professionals. But let me open the floor for a discussion on a topic that is close to my heart. I'm just kidding. On the CPTPP. Does anybody know what it stands for? Don't be shy. Please use the emoticon. Is it the emoticon of the reactions to the reaction button to maybe answer the question or a thumbs up? So on CPTPP, has anyone heard of CPTPP? Because for the next 2 days, I'm sure it will be brought up.
If you have any impressions or anything
Yes,
to say,
I think
your opinion.
Sonia, is it Sonia?
Okay, Haris, I also see Haris with his emoticon. Anyone else?
I think Sonia also put the thumbs up. Would you like to answer that? Yeah.
Sure. So it is the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it is been signed, and it currently is it's not in its original form that it was envisioned to be because of various political actors potentially pulling out of the agreement.
Yes, that's right. So the CPTPP consists of 11 partners minus the US, and the original agreement is the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and this includes the US. So Malaysia is a part, has signed the CPTPP, but we haven't ratified it yet. So we're looking forward to that maybe in the next coming year. So let's talk about RCEP. Any takers on RCEP? Does anyone know what RCEP is? Has heard of RCEP?
Or if you have general things to say about RCEP. Yes, I see Sergio with his thumbs up. Perhaps you can say something about RCEP, Sergio.
Yes, the RCEP is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. And it's, well, it includes all the APEC and the Asian countries plus China. And I believe, well, here in Mexico, we have the view that this particular partnership is being promoted by China as opposed to the original intention of the United States regarding the TPP. We all know, of course, that the United States pulled out of the TPP, and well, this is we believe that this is a huge opportunity for China to increase its influence in the region.
Thank you so much for the definition and also your insight on RCEP. We have another thumbs up by Mr. Marcus.
Yeah, so I think RCEP is special in the sense that it does mark the first comprehensive trade agreement among not just the ASEAN countries, but also among China, Japan, and Korea, which jointly does contribute about 25%, I think 25% of global economic output. And it's really also the first trade agreement that Japan has signed with China or Korea, or rather the first plurilateral trade agreement that's signed by China. And from Moody's, when we look at it, we also think that it's really an agreement that at a time where protectionism is on the rise and the global rules-based trade system kind of being fragmented right now. So such an agreement that encourages intra-regional cooperation and intra-regional trade does help to cement the relationship within the Asia region together, and it does help to improve things like labor mobility, e-commerce, FDI flows, as well as improving, for example, the establishment of the common rules of origin framework does widen market access for exporters in member countries. And in such a sense, it really does also benefit countries in the region that really export oriented. And especially emerging markets in the region would really benefit from this as well, because it does enhance or rather facilitate the whole supply chain reorganization away from the more advanced economies, especially as well as China, where many of the lower end manufacturing businesses will also be reallocated to some of the emerging markets, thus enhancing employment in those countries, and also it helps in terms of the business with the lowering costs. So there's a lot of benefits in this agreement. So yeah, that's my point of view. Thank you.
Okay, from Nanhao.
I just want to add on one more thing. That is normally like a lot of media saying that the RCEP is actually led by China, which is not true, because in fact within the ASEAN Centrality Regional Architecture, the RCEP was indeed initiated by ASEAN, pushed forward by ASEAN to sign. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for that very interesting input. I was just going to highlight that, yes, some do view that RCEP is led by China, but on the other side of the spectrum, there has been observations that ASEAN Centrality is still plays the lead role in the finalization of RCEP agreement. But again, this is open for discussion for the next coming days. Any other inputs on RCEP, which was just signed like a couple of months ago, waiting to be ratified for the next year or so? Do I see any input? Yes, Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, I think just to second Hanan's comment about the importance of ASEAN, I mean, because RCEP really is kind of the agreement that brought together all of ASEAN's +1 trade agreements is how that really started. But also, I think, you know, what's interesting from how RCEP was finalized is that this is one of the first COVID era trade agreements to be finished, and the fact that it was concluded virtually, just in terms of how we view the practice of negotiating trade agreements, is kind of an interesting development, and one which I think might become increasingly commonplace, that negotiations take place virtually and negotiators don't actually meet in person to conclude these agreements.
Thank you, Matthew. You mentioned about the pandemic as well. So maybe we just throw this question to the space again. Like, what are your opinion or like perspective about the likely economic recovery in the year 2 of the pandemic, 2021? Does anyone have any opinion on that? Like, is it a possibility, or we're still going to see some economic constraint in the coming year?
Mr. Nam Ho, the floor is yours.
Well, I think, yeah, so far, like according to the IMF and the World Bank's estimate, so China is going to be the only one bounce back to the positive growth rate. And I think that would be a good signal and a very good information for the regional economic recovery. Because one thing is that with the RCEP, China is trying to build China-centered end destination. So previously, we normally have the Western countries, Western Europe and America as the end destination for the regional supply chains, value chains, and industry chains. But now I think it seems that with the economic development of China and also with a regional initiative that can enable China to be the end destination. So there's kind of a more frequent intra-trade within the East Asia region, particularly between Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia. So that would enable the regional countries to have a more promising prospect for economic recovery. But of course, there's another uncertain factor is that whether the pandemic is going to last long and whether the regional countries are able to tackle the pandemic-induced situations. Yeah.
Does anyone else have to say about their respective country? About economic recovery in their respective country, perhaps? Sergio, yeah, I see your hand.
Yes, well, here in Mexico, the economic recovery expectations depend a lot on trade with the United States, of course. And I like to see it in this way. I mean, for the Latin American countries in the Pacific Rim, there are very different realities, no? Because, for example, Mexico, as I mentioned before, is integrated with the United States and Canada, economically integrated, with a very deep integration, actually. But for the rest of Latin America, is quite different. I think, for example, in Peru, in Chile, in Colombia, countries that are in Ecuador, that are in the Pacific Rim, for example, which have a deeper relationship with China. And I think that for these countries, for example, it will be, their recovery will be more dependent on its relationship with China rather than Mexico, of course.
Aaron, you raise your thumb.
Yes, thank you. So I think in terms of the economic recovery, a key aspect of that is getting the pandemic under control. So we've seen in New Zealand, for example, and Australia, among many other countries in the region as well, when the pandemic has been adequately tackled, the economy is able to rebound, there's more confidence. And now with the arrival of vaccines, I think that will only help that regionally, but it does depend on us being able to deploy the vaccines effectively, including to developing countries where that infrastructure might not be in place. And so that will involve some regional cooperation, I think, which will help the economic recovery.
Thanks, Aaron. And also Sergio earlier. Dr. Juita, do you want to introduce anything else?
Yes, we're going to have, as mentioned before, the role of ASEAN centrality is vital. But when it comes to ASEAN centrality, then we might also talk about the ASEAN Way. Can I get feedback on anybody who knows what ASEAN Way is? Mr. Namha.
Well, basically, I think the ASEAN Way is based on the consensus. So whatever is going to be on the agenda of ASEAN, it needs the collective consensus of all 10 ASEAN member states.
Yes, anybody from ASEAN wants to corroborate on that definition? Don't be shy.
Anyone from Vietnam, from Malaysia? Martin, okay, Martin.
Yeah, regarding that part, I think that the perspective that we have on the Asian Way is how the organization has been able to manage and give some sort of cooperation and peace to the region. So I think that through trade, cooperation has been more like significant or important.
Yes, thank you. ASEAN is quite unique and it has its own mechanism to push forward its agenda. Some might think it's too slow if compared to the EU, but this is again the ASEAN way. When we talk about the yes, we have another Miss Dayong Lee.
Yes, thank you. Just a small point, I just wanted to mention the non-interference principle. It's a charter in the ASEAN principle that talks about how the ASEAN member countries should respect the independence and the sovereignty of the country by not interfering in the internal affairs. And that might be leading to why, like you mentioned, how the ASEAN Way could be seemingly as slow and very long, taking a long time to make a decision, but it is one of the reasons why they want to respect sovereignty within the ASEAN nations. So just a small point, thank you.
Any participants from ASEAN who would like to give their input on the ASEAN Way? Don't be shy. No? Okay, then maybe we can also talk about the ASEAN minus. Does anybody know what that means or what it entails to have an ASEAN minus consensus or an ASEAN minus format?
I think the ASEAN Plus format is more familiar to other people, right? Because of it's a special arrangement between ASEAN and its dialogue partners. So there's ASEAN Plus 1, ASEAN Plus 3. ASEAN Plus 3 is basically with China, Japan, and South Korea. But we are asking about ASEAN minus, a less familiar term for many people actually. So does anyone have any views on that? I see none how. Okay, maybe you can start and we will invite others to also speak.
Well, I think ASEAN manners is basically about something which is unable to be achieved collective consensus by all 10 ASEAN member states. So some of the like-minded ASEAN member states, they could establish a certain framework or cooperation within their sub-region. Yeah, that is ASEAN manners. I think there are a few examples like CLMV countries and other regional group, sub-region groupings.
Thank you, Mr. Nanhao. Again, anyone who has not spoken, we do not bite, we do not judge. Please share your views. It's a very safe space, as Mr. Hugh Stevens said earlier.
Yes, this session, the two sessions today are focused basically on the next gen. Please take this opportunity to share your thoughts, share your opinions. There will be no judgment, because for the next 2 days, tomorrow and the day after that, it's solely for the general meeting, so we won't be able to give our inputs then. So please use this day to the fullest. We will also be talking about jobs and unemployment, youth unemployment in one of the sessions in the next few days. So there will be terms like TVET. Let's start off with TVET. Anybody who would like to explain to the group what TVET means to them? Do I see anyone?
Can we get anyone who has not spoken? Miss Siti Tumin and Nur Sazali have raised their hands. Come on. Okay, share your thoughts.
Yeah, so the reason we both raised our thumbs is because we worked on this. So TVET is kind of a technical-based learning education where usually you acquire a particular skill set where you are required to do a bit more sort of technical jobs rather than say go to university and then you sit through the books and get a degree. It's particularly very important for Malaysia, and I think imagine a lot of countries in Southeast Asia because a lot of our industries are based on manufacturing, and one of the issues of mismatching between the skill set that people have and the kind of jobs that exist in the market is actually to use TVET to make sure people have the skill set to be part of the job market. And in Malaysia, I think a particular problem that my colleague worked on is looking at how TVET is actually, it has quite a negative connotation to it, but actually a lot of industry players demand for it. And the next work is actually to kind of think about how do we get more people who might not be interested to go to university to use TVET as a way to integrate in the labor market in a better, more efficient way. Yeah, that's experience from Malaysia.
Thank you, Siti. Mr. Nanhao, do you want to top up on that explanation earlier?
Oh yeah, I agree with what was just said, and I think this is something particularly important for some of the ASEAN member states because it's about the capacity building. So I think it is also among the important areas between ASEAN member states and its dialogue partners. For example, between China and ASEAN countries, China has sponsored a lot of ASEAN students to come to China to take TVET education, be it degree programs or simply just the training programs. Yeah.
I saw Hyun Jin Kang, if I'm not mistaken. Hyun Jin Kang and Nur Sazali, perhaps we start with Hyun Jin Kang first.
Okay, thank you. So just to add some point from Korea's view, so I know that there are a lot of TVET program offered from Korea to as an official development assistance, and especially during like COVID-19 pandemic, I think a digital platform for the TVET is also very important that we have to remind of, especially during this time.
Thank you. Nur Sazali, yeah, Nur Suraya Sazali.
Hi, I think like they have covered it all, so I have nothing else to add. But in Malaysia, especially technical vocational trainings, is not as
perhaps you want to share some of the TVET situation in Malaysia.
Situations? At least for Malaysia, I think like there are multiple agencies, spearheading TVET, which is problem because we have overlap. So we spread it out, and then that means that we don't go too deep. That's number one, and number two is just community-wide, especially in the rural area and the urban area too. Parents are still quite fixated with the idea that children should go to universities. And then a lot of time people say that, oh, you should do, you should do outreach and you should campaign to the parents to say that the future of work is evolving. But I like to ask that question to myself too. Would I actually ask my children to enroll in TVET? It's quite difficult. That's all.
Thank you, Anwar Sazali, for that very Malaysian perspective. Dr. Juwita, want to jump to the topic of climate change?
Yes, there will also be a session on climate change. So let me just highlight one of the main topics that will be discussed. It's on the SDGs, also my very, very favorite topic, SDG 17. Any takers on what that term means to them or their country specifically? Anybody?
Hello.
Yes.
SDGs is from the UN and it's like they're talking about how to become more sustainable, and the project also focus on the environmental. It's very related to our meeting, and like climate change and agriculture and other ocean issues. They are really related to the 17 SDGs. So a lot of NGO, non-governmental organizations, their purpose is to attend to the SDGs. Also in the education, we also write in this kind of the issue into our textbook to educate the next generation about these issues. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Miss Melissa?
Hi, yeah, it's more of an observation. So, well, first, from my country, my city's perspective, Hong Kong, well, honestly, we are a very small place, and probably you guys are aware. So speaking of climate change or infrastructure whatsoever, we're probably not as a big player compared to bigger countries like China or in Vietnam, where a lot of wind energy or solar energy plants are being built. But an observation that I made in the past, because I spent some time working in Singapore before, so this is how I got to know more about the industry in Southeast Asia. And I think a good starting point for businesses or governments is that they are willing to adopt and change in their business model and structure. So for example, in the past, we keep thinking about generating energy or whatsoever, but now it seems that the energy companies are really willing to change their business model, thinking about more high-tech services, like they're doing district cooling whatsoever, which is something relatively new, supported by technologies. But on the other hand, one of the biggest challenge, especially for Latin American countries, is that the Amazonian rainforest was there, and I was lucky to be visiting last year, and I see that even though we have a lot of technology available now, but the problem is that they may have different priorities in other countries. So the capacity seems to be lacking in other countries, which I think is something that we should spend more time and effort thinking about how we can cooperate and deal with that on a country level.
Thank you, Ms. Melissa. Yijing Wang, I saw your thumb just now.
All right, thanks for inviting me to speak. And I'd like to share our experience from China. So basically, I think there are two levels. First, from the national level, our country or our economy is targeting at the poverty alleviation part. So we know that the SDGs, its first goal is to solve the extreme poverty before 2030, and my economy is actually targeting to resolve the poverty issue by the end of 2020s, and we hold to believe that most of the people in China now is living above the extreme poverty line, which I believe is $1.9 a day. And from another perspective, those industries. So from my perspective is that ESGs, they are actually trying to engage in the SDGs. So to make sure that their targets or their profits are in line with the SDGs. Like I have witnessed a lot of different enterprises when they're designing their strategies, they are involving the SDGs into it. And another thing is about their innovation part. So as SDG is quite important, it's got like 169 sub goals. So before 2030, especially we're moving into 2021 to 2030, the action decade, right? So more enterprises are integrating into SDGs, which I believe this is a very important part. We can cooperate with different economies, so we can share our experiences, especially on how to involve those SDGs into our business part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wang. Unfortunately, we only have 5 minutes left, so I will only allow one more speaker. I saw Darshan Joshi wanted to say something. Sorry, afterwards we'll move on to perhaps election of the leader for the memorandum later. So yeah, please Darshan, you have the final say on this.
All right, okay, a lot of pressure. So I'll give a bit of perspective from the the Malaysian perspective on the SDGs and climate change. So I've had the pleasure of doing some work in this area, and a lot of the SDGs, I think there are 5 of them, the last time I looked, that directly relate to climate change. And there are further 6 SDGs whose our progress towards these SDGs will be threatened if we don't address climate change to a better degree in Malaysia. So, and these include things like affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities, responsible production, climate action, and life on land. These are all things that
Oh, thank you so much, Darshan. Now, I think we lost Darshan for a second there. I hope he's gonna come back soon. Miss Lee, I noticed that you had your hand raised, but please keep that thought so that we can talk about this session, this term as well as the topic in the next session. So now, can we do like a short voting round of who's going to be speaking or presenting the memorandum to the PECC members on Thursday? You're all leaders of your community, but we would need one to be able to deliver your thoughts and your views and your impressions on the general meeting, as well as other related issues. So let's, I'll pass the floor to Haris for the explanation of how we're going to do the voting.
Right, thank you, Juta. Let's see, so we have 42 participants in the Zoom call, and there's no voting function, so we'll have to be a bit creative, I feel. Let's try doing this, right? So I hope because we're all a bit younger, we are a bit more proficient using Zoom, let's try voting by using the reactions. You can choose whichever reaction you want. So perhaps when we say we call for votes for option A, you respond by providing a reaction on your screen, and then myself and Calvin will attempt to count it before it all disappears. So we have, I think, about a gap of about 10 seconds. That should be adequate time to look at the screens. Okay, hold on.
Yes, we're jumping the gun there a bit. That is going to be the voting for the next session, the topics for the next session. Now we're going to vote for the leader who's going to be presenting on the last day. So may I get some nominations first before we vote? Some nominations? Don't be shy. Anybody who wants to nominate anybody? Or should I nominate someone?
Volunteer yourself. So you're voluntold. Sorry, Dongwoo Kim, do you want to be a leader? Did you raise your hand?
No, so yeah, I raised my hand in order to nominate Mr. Hao Nan as our leader based on the excellent insights he has been sharing enthusiastically.
Okay, we have one candidate, Mr. Nan Hao. Do we see anyone else?
Anybody seconding that?
I nominate Mr. Matthew Castle.
Mr. Matthew?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody seconding that?
Sergio, you raise your thumb. Are you nominating yourself or?
No, of course not. That would be very pretentious of me. I would like to nominate Mrs. Melissa Tong.
Melissa Tong. Thank you for that nomination. So I think we'll only take 5 nominations, okay? Because it seems like everyone is nominating everyone else.
It's okay to nominate yourself. We will not judge. There's no space for judgment here. Sonia?
Yeah, I wanted to nominate, I think it's Darshan, but I don't know if, was he a part of your organization? Is that allowed? But if it is allowed, I would like to nominate him because I was really enjoying his point.
Next gen of this institute, so that is allowed. Thank you so much. Can I have one more nomination? We have in the chat.
In the chat box, Lorraine Ashcraft nominating Miss Sonia Rose. Okay, is that Sonia? Yeah. Sorry, we are already closing the nomination round because we have 5 people. Yeah, okay. Can we get each of these people to say if they're okay with being the leader? Being a leader is not only to present the memorandum on the last day itself, but also to sort of like lead this discussion among yourselves in the composition process of the memorandum. So can we get Mr. Nan Hao, the first name in the list? Are you all right with being a leader in this?
Well, I guess yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then we have Melissa. Are you okay with being nominated?
Yeah, I'm glad to. Thank you.
Okay,
Very
and then
nice.
we have Matthew.
Yep, it's fine. Fine for me.
Okay, and then we have Sonia.
Yes.
Great. And then we have Darshan.
Yeah, so sorry, my connection dropped and I don't know what happened. I missed what I'm being nominated for.
You're being nominated to present the youth memorandum to the PECC member on the 17th of December in the wrap-up session.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, great. So let's do the voting. Let's start with Sonia. Can we get the voting for Sonia, please?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up or any other reaction.
Sonia. James, Nan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's a good question, Dongwoo Kim. Do we only get 1 vote?
Yeah, that's a good question. 1 person, 1 vote.
Okay,
In a democracy
that's
like
true. Yeah, let's do it. First past the post style. 1 person, 1 vote. We don't know how many times you're going to vote, but just try not to cheat on this process, please. Thank you.
Can we start over?
Yes,
yeah,
please.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, the first nominee is Miss Sonia. Thumbs up. Yes, you can use raise hands as well if you want, if that's available to you.
First nominee, how many, how many? Okay, all right. All right.
May I suggest us all to use the raise hand function so that Kevin and Harris can count them easily rather than the thumbs up or the emotions and reactions.
Sorry, let's restart this, right? Let's go for the first candidate for PECC Next Gen leader, Nan Hao. If you agree with Nan Hao being elected as the leader, please raise your hands using the function now. Thank you. Okay, let's give it a bit more time while everyone figures out how to use raise hands. Okay, let's close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's 4 votes. Thank you. All right, Darshan seems to be voting for his opponent, but it's okay. Darshan's voting for Nan Hao as well. That's one. All right, with that, let's move on to the second candidate, Mr. Matthew Castle. Matthew Castle, everyone, raise hands, please. All right, the votes are coming in. Let's give it some time.
Sorry, Ms. Tao Nguyen, is that a raised hand?
Are you physically raising
Yeah,
your hand?
physically raise your hand.
Yes, I raised my hand.
So that counts, right, Haris?
Yeah, that counts.
All right.
The raise hand functions can be found in the participants button at the bottom of your screen. So if you click the participants button, then you can see that you can turn on your camera, turn off your camera, and also turn on your raise hand function.
All right, moving on to the next candidate, Miss Melissa Tong, I think. Is it Tong? Sorry. Who agrees with Melissa Tong being nominated as PECC Next Gen leader? Please raise your hands. Those who had raised their hands earlier, please put it down. See, as you can tell, democracy is messy, but hopefully this produces the best leader.
Does anyone physically raise their hand again? No? I don't see. No? Oh, okay. No physical raise hand.
Did you? No. All right, moving on. Darshan. Who agrees with Darshan being nominated as PECC Next Gen leader? Please raise your hand.
We have finished all the nominees, right? One more. Sonia Rose,
Sonia.
last name. Yeah. Who is voting for Miss Sonia Rose?
Sonia Rose. Let's see. All right, giving it a few more seconds. Please raise your hands, ladies and gentlemen. Right.
To be clear, we organizers, we do not vote, yeah? We do not have any voice on this matter. I see Stephanie Lee in the chat box, is it? So Stephanie Lee, can I count that as your vote to Darshan? Yeah, all right. We have a result, ladies and gentlemen. Haris, Alvin?
Yeah, all right. The winner, I'm not going to count by how many votes, is Matthew Castle. Congratulations, you're the leader.
Congratulations, Mr. Castle. Okay, I think we are ready for a break, yeah? Or do we, Bang Ali, do we have time for like photo session now? Do we want to do it afterwards? Afterwards is fine, right? Okay. What do you want to do? Okay, so just like 1 to 3 minutes. Can we get everyone to turn on their video? So we'll just have to take a picture for everyone by screenshot. So can everybody please turn on their video if that's all right? Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. Bang Ali, you want to give the cue? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, everybody, are you ready? We're going to take a picture for the first screen and then the second screen. Put on your best smile. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Wonderful. And another big smile. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Perfect. We hopefully can circulate that picture to you before the meeting ends. So thank you so much for your active participation. We were a bit afraid that it's not going to be as interactive as we would want it to be, but thank you so much for your insights, your active participation. Can I suggest us to take a 5-minute break before we go into the next session, session 2? I will then pass the floor to our facilitators, James, Haris, and also Kelvin. So if you need to get that coffee, go ahead. If you need to get that croissant, go ahead. We'll see you right back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Harris. My name is James Toe. I'm at the Asia New Zealand Foundation. And so I'm going to be facilitating this afternoon for our second session, which is kind of a track 2 simulation. And this will give you an idea of what it's like. I assume for many of you, this is probably your first introduction to these kinds of regional conferences, regional forums where different countries are represented to share and exchange views. So what we're going to be doing is to try and build up your confidence, build up your networks, and of course build up your knowledge with this next-gen simulation. So over the next 2 or 3 days, you'll be listening to panels of experts They will be obviously talking about how they're dealing with COVID, the economic and trade situation from their perspective. But it's also a chance for people from around the region to do a bit more of a deeper dive by asking questions and providing some commentary. And that happens in the Q&A components of the forum. So what we're going to be doing today is to kind of simulate that environment, give you guys a dry run of how you can shape some of the things that you might want to contribute, whether it's in the form of a question, asking for a clarification, or just putting forward your point of view. And these are what are called interventions. So in a conference, when you raise your hand, you want to say something, it's called an intervention. And this is an opportunity for you to test drive some of those things that you might want to be raising over the next couple of days. We want you to be able to get the most out of your experience at the PECC general meeting. And as I mentioned, because many of you may be new to this kind of environment, we just want to give you that sort of opportunity to prep yourself for what you're going to be expecting over the next few days. So the idea of what we're trying to do is to do that deep dive and to be able to identify and tease out some of the contexts and drivers for behind some of those foreign and trade policies that we'll be hearing about. So I do want you to be asking questions, making those interventions, but with the understanding that it's a safe space, as was mentioned earlier. This is not a test. You're not getting graded on this. If you're still students, you're not getting graded. It's not an interrogation. It's not to know how much you know about something. It's not to show off or whatever it is. We just want to be able to find out from each other and to share perspectives and have those conversations. So the first thing I might mention is that I understand that most of the discussions we held under the Chatham House rule. Harris, can you confirm that? The Chatham House rule?
Yep, correct.
Yep. So who's aware of the Chatham House rule, or who knows about who knows what that means? No? Okay. Yep. Matthew, Sonia, yeah, a few of the New Zealanders know. Chatham House rule. Matthew, do you just want to put in your 2 cents about what that means?
Thanks, James. Yeah, so my understanding of the Chatham House rule is that essentially it protects the views of speakers because it allows them to voice their opinions and their positions with the understanding that nobody will attribute any comments they make directly back to them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is an opportunity for people to speak freely and frankly without the fear that they're going to be quoted or cited. So it's really helpful in these kinds of discussions that you can talk about potentially sensitive issues and not wishing to cause any offense, but with the main intention of trying to have a good, free and frank exchange of ideas. And the best way to do that is to know that you're not going to be quoted or cited. But having said that, you're free to write about what's being talked about. This is not a censorship thing. This is actually about saying, well, okay, these are the themes that were talked about during this forum. It's just that you don't quote or cite whoever said it. Okay, so hopefully with that rule in place, we can have a better exchange of ideas. The other thing that we should point out is really interesting for these kinds of forums is to have a think about what is relevant to you. What are those kind of areas that you want to understand better that maybe you can frame up as an intervention? So today we're going to be going through that process. If you need a bit of a help with that, just let us know. We'll be having this conversation, this exchange on a topic that we're going to vote on very shortly. And we're happy to put that conversation on pause just for a moment if anyone needs a bit of help. If they've got an idea that they can't really get the wording right, or they're not sure which angle maybe is best to try and approach making an intervention, just let us know. Happy to help you with that. And then it's a good way just to test drive your thinking and some of the ideas that you might have. So with that in mind, let's just really get straight into it. We have on the table 5 topics I think you would have seen it in an email previously, the 5 topics that are up for discussion today. Yep, I see a few people nodding. We're also happy to take 1 or 2 more suggestions from the floor on a topic that may not be in there, but you still want to be able to discuss with your colleagues from across the region. So we're going to be doing a deep dive. It's going to be over an hour talking about a subject, so we want it to be a rich conversation. And so far we've got 5 topics we can talk about. The first one is socio-economic concerns of the next generation. So this is kind of the top of mind stuff. You know, what's keeping you up at night? Some of you are policy advisors, right? Some of you are academics. You know, what are the really pressing issues that are on your mind when it comes to the socio-economic concerns that you might have? So some of the things that I thought of that might be included is to argue about the have and have-nots, you know, the wealth gap, disparities in society. In New Zealand, the big conversation now is house prices. House prices have just gone straight through the roof. Young people can't afford to buy a house. What does it mean for employment? Does it mean for all kinds of different things? You know, so that can be one angle that you can look at. But these are going to be organic conversations. So if you think that some of these socioeconomic concerns are on top of your mind, this is one topic that we might want to draw out further. Okay, second one, and kind of related to that, but a bit more specific, is the increasing cost of living. So I'm not sure how you guys are placed where you are, but the role of globalization, I feel, has actually raised prices. It's decreased it in some other ways. I mean, it's cheap for us to buy a television or to buy clothes, but it's expensive to buy necessities. I mean, it's really funny that we're in being in New Zealand, we pay the same, if not more, for a litre of milk. You know, where you guys are, you may be getting milk the same price that we get in New Zealand, but New Zealand makes a lot of milk. And because it's the market price driven model, you know, these things are increasing our cost of living. So just again, another thing to think about if the cost of living is something that you want to tease out and find out more about from your colleagues. The third topic is the future of jobs and job security. For me, this is a fascinating one as well. It's about not just the role of, say, COVID or whatever it is on the economy in terms of jobs, but what about, you know, what's going to happen tomorrow? What is the role of AI, you know, artificial intelligence, technology, robots, you know, are we going to be irrelevant in very labor-intensive industries? On the other hand, which economies are going to be winners out of this? So that's another conversation that we can have. Have a think about whether that you want to talk more about jobs and job security. Number 4, trade wars. It's called trials or opportunities. So my thinking about this one, because I'm from an IR, international relations politics background, is all about the geopolitics of what that could mean. Is this about the US-China tariff war? Is this about the benefits of trade, of globalization? Is it the win-win model or is it the win-more model? You know, so different things we can think about there. Is it about decoupling? That's a very popular buzzword at the moment, decoupling. So we can have that conversation for trade wars. Number 5, the last one, is the limits of globalization. And it's a very broad topic. It talks about armed conflicts, pandemics, disasters, sort of covers everything. And I thought I'd throw into that as well. What about regional responses to some of the topics mentioned earlier, like climate change and environmental issues? So if that's, this last topic is very broad, maybe a bit more difficult to steer, but I think because of the broadness and context of those topics, I think we can still have a good conversation. So those are the 5 that are on the table right now, and I've seen some of you nodding already, so that's good that we've got we've piqued your interest. But I'm also happy to take 1 or 2 other suggestions from the floor. Does anyone have a particular topic that hasn't been raised, but you think would make a really good conversation piece over the next hour? So don't be shy. Again, there's
Right, I think James has frozen. All right, let's just do this. Dongwoo Kim, I see you have your hand raised up. Do you want to add something? Or perhaps share a potential area where we left out?
Yeah, maybe this might be going a little bit off the topic of this conference, but maybe discussing the issue of gender and the social polarization we're seeing and then its impact on economy might be worthwhile.
Okay. Yep. Okay, I love that. Thanks, Dongwoo. What we might do is, shall we throw that into number 5? You know, because that talks about all these broad issues of the limits of globalization. Do you think gender issues and that could fit into that conversation?
I think that'll be wonderful because the schema in which I'm thinking about gender issues is also within the broader context of political polarization and identity politics that seems to be taking more of a global form.
Yep.
So yeah, that sounds perfect.
Great. Okay, I will love that. So number 5, we'll broaden that out to include those gender issues, polarization of views and that sort of thing. So thank you, Dongwoo. Okay, anyone else? Some of you might have to jump in. As I mentioned, we've got quite a lot of people and I can only see about, was it 20 at a time? So raising your hand might not work immediately. So if you have got something, feel free just to unmute your mic and jump in.
Yeah, I think Sergio had raised his hand earlier along with Ed Pedrosa from the Secretariat.
Okay,
Sergio?
Sure. So that was Sergio and Ed. Okay, so can I have Sergio going first and then followed by Ed?
I was going to suggest to deepen the discussion on climate change and global warming and these issues, but I see that topic 5 has disasters on it, so maybe we can relate it there.
Yep, perfect. There's no problem at all. And finally, Ed. Hello, you'll have to unmute yourself, please.
A similar point on how we think about the climate change issue, whether you want to accept the premise that whether it is a limit on globalization or whether there is an opportunity for globalization and how we address the climate change issue. And one of the interesting things I've found with the next generation programs, when we've asked what are the priorities that next generation participants see for what do they think we're not doing right in current work programs, they've always said to us, you're not addressing climate change, right? It's not a big enough priority. That's what we want you to see more doing more on. So I'm always curious to see how how you see the sort of matrix of priorities on these things. But anyway.
Perfect. Thank you, Eduardo. Really appreciate that. And you're right. You know, every time that we do these Track 2 dialogues, climate change is always on the agenda for the next gen as well. So thank you for confirming and raising that. Okay. So anyone else have a topic they might want to raise? Otherwise, we can probably go straight to vote. And I've got a feeling where this is going. Nan Hao, you have a topic that you might think is useful?
Yeah, actually, I'm not going to nominate any new topic, but I want to broaden the topic in relation to the trade wars. So I was thinking that probably we should not simply just focus on the geopolitical dimension of the current trade dynamics, probably because for now, the international trade, particularly in East Asia, Asia-Pacific region, there's a digital trade dimension, the trade in digital service, and also the trade in data. And also there's a climate change dimension. For example, the 3 countries, China, Japan, and Korea, they recently announced their carbon neutral development goals. This definitely would have positive impacts on trade. And also, since the 3 countries have very frequent, very tight trade relations with the Southeast Asian countries, Latin American countries, and other regional countries. So I think this would also impact the climate change in general. Yeah. So I was thinking whether we can broaden the trade war topic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's not a problem. The topics that are there are designed to be broad and organic so that when we do have these conversations, you can contribute your own angle and perspective on that. So there's no problem. We're definitely happy to incorporate that angle into session 4.
Yep, James,
okay.
We have Stephanie Lee, Hyun Jin Kong, and Aaron Soans having their hands raised up. Do you want to call upon them?
Okay. Yep. Okay, let's go to that. Okay.
Stephanie?
I see. Okay, sorry. Yes, I'll just have my participant. So it was Stephanie first, was it?
Yep.
Okay, Stephanie, then followed by Hyunjin and then Aaron. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep, great. Thank you, Stephanie. Please go ahead.
Perhaps I would when you talked about, James, about looking at the haves and have-nots, the inequality, on that, I guess there are several angles that we can take, and perhaps one of the most critical one I would say is digital divide, and that ties very well to the future of jobs and the kind of skills that the next gen or the next future generation would need, and that kind of depends on what access do we have to all the digital infrastructure or anything like that related to digital. So
I think you're right there. I think we can actually merge number 2 and number 3, the cost of living and future of jobs, actually into number 1. So that may make the voting a bit easier. So shall we do that, if that's all right, Harris? Can we have session 1 also including number 2 and number 3 as one sort of broader subject on social economic issues?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, that makes it easier. Okay, so Hyunjin, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I wanted to point out the fatigue of the digital platforms that we are currently having, because like it's been almost a year that we started to use a lot of digital platform, not just for the economic assistance, but also like education platform for the like recent generation, especially in younger generation. And I thought that like digital platform is suggested as a alternative platform, but actually it kind of gives us fatigue. And we have to discuss like, because for our generation especially, we don't know when another pandemic is coming or another economic crisis is coming. So I think we have to discuss like how we're going to smartly use this digital platform, or what are the like pros and cons of this digital platform. I don't know where to put this topic. But,
Well, no, I think it's really useful. We can maybe you just raise it as one of the questions, as an intervention as we move into the conversation. I think you can fit that in any of the 3. Okay. Aaron?
I had a similar point to Hyunjin. So it's around the issue of privacy and cross-border data flows, cybersecurity. And I guess the fundamental issue is that we have a global internet, but we have political jurisdictions that sort of end at geographic boundaries. And the difficulty is trying to come up with a way of sort of collectively regulating or not regulating the internet to address these issues.
Great. Okay. Cool. Thank you for that. Again, I think you can raise that issue in, I think, probably any of those 3 sessions somehow as well. So thank you for that. We'll probably have to go to vote soon, but I noticed, Melissa, you had your hand up very briefly. We can take a comment from you, and then I'll pass back to Harris and Calvin to vote on a subject we can talk about. Melissa.
I just think it's a good point. So it's just a quick reaction.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Harris and Calvin, over to you. If we can get a vote on the topic that we can talk about over the next hour, please.
Thanks, James. Hold on, give me a second to just deliberate, Calvin. Right, okay, so let's do it this way, right? So we received the initial list from Dr. Juwita and the other organizers, containing 3 main bullet points and 2 sub-points parked under the socio-economic concerns bit. And then many of you had raised legitimate subtopics as well. But if everyone's okay with this, right, why don't we conduct the voting this way? We can vote on the main topics, which are 1, socio-economic concerns of the next generation, 2, trade wars, trials, and opportunities.
Trade wars and international trade as well.
Yeah, trade wars, international trade, and all that. And the third one, limits of globalization. And then we can try to figure out when we come up with our discussion, we can fit in the various other topics into these three main broad points. First, the idea is that we vote on something that's a bit broader, and then we filter down in terms of the content that we talk about. H, what do you think? Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So let's conduct the voting similar to earlier where we used the raised hand function. Right? Try to only vote once because we don't know who's committing voter fraud. Okay, let's go. Socio-economic concerns. Anyone feels this is the best topic to talk about? Please raise your hand. Okay, please leave it for a bit while we count the votes.
Oh, a lot of late voters. This is your last chance.
Yeah, we can't end the voting process too early because someone's gonna allege that we are involved in voter suppression, right? So let's just give it a bit more time.
Yeah. Stephanie's just asking. Do you only get one vote?
Yes, please. But again, there's no way to check this, so it's really up to you. But let's try to stick to one vote, please. All right, Kelvin's just indicated he's tabulated that. So let's move on to option number 2, trade wars, international trade. All right, everyone put your hands down, please. Let's reset this. There's 3 more hands raised. Melissa, Sergio, and Nanhao, can you put down your hand, please? Thank you. All right, great. Let's go for voting option number 2, trade wars, international trade, trials and opportunities. Who feels this is the best topic? Please raise your hands now. It's just one.
Yeah.
Let's see, anyone else? Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Not scope on this idea, it seems. All right, Martin, thank you. You can put your hand down. All right, the third option, the limits of globalization. Whoever feels this is the best topic to be talking about, please raise your hands now.
Yeah. So this is the broader one with the climate change agenda. Yeah, potentially adding in gender issues and other stuff as well.
Right, Dongwu, you mentioned you're changing your vote, right? What was your initial vote?
The first one, I think, for session 1. Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Thanks.
That's right. It's pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, let's close the vote in 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to pass the floor to Kelvin to read out the result.
So it seems that we have about 8 votes for globalization and about 11, well, rather 10 votes for socio-economic issues. So perhaps we should decide on that, socio-economic issues.
Yeah.
Generation.
Okay.
And we can also.
So that was socio-economic? Okay. So no, that's fine. Those who voted for the limits of globalization, I think there's still room to be able to address your concerns in the context of that wider socio-economic conversation. So no worries there. And same also for Martin as well. I know you voted for the trade wars, but maybe you can throw in a trade angle into the conversation somehow. Okay. So what happens now, once we know what the topic is, now the format of the conversation is based on well, in New Zealand, these are similar to what we do in our foreign ministry. We have these things called foreign ministry consultations. And so the way they're set up is that you have a guest speaker, an expert, normally one or two, who will lead on the discussion. They will kick off with about 4 or 5 talking points, normally for about 10 minutes max. I think for today, we probably don't need 10 minutes. We can probably start off with maybe 3 to 5 minutes on what are some of the pressing issues. And that is designed to kickstart this conversation that people around the table can then intervene. They set up the interventions, they can ask questions, they can add to the conversation, and that's done like in a Q&A format that is chaired by a moderator, which will be me. So what I might do is to hand the floor over to our first lead discussant, who is going to be Kelvin, I think. Is that right? And if Kelvin can speak, say, is 5 minutes going to be enough for you?
Yeah, plenty.
Yep, we plenty. 5 minutes just to kickstart that conversation. Then Harris, you're going to be like a respondent and maybe just pick up on anything that's Kelvin said or add on a couple of other talking points. Also, max 5 minutes. Yep. And I'll be keeping an eye on the time to make sure that your points are succinct and clear. And then we can have a really good discussion with the rest of the people in the room. So how does that sound?
Beautiful.
Okay, so let me hand over to Kelvin, our first lead discussant on socio-economic concerns for the next generation. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thank you, James. So I'll probably just take like 2-3 minutes to sort of kickstart this discussion, because I'm sure a lot of you have a lot more comprehensive thoughts and a lot of more experts in the participants, and I don't want to take up too much time. So just to provide some sort of ideas of springboard. Socioeconomic concerns for the next generation is quite a broad topic. So as we discussed earlier, it encompasses a variety of things. So firstly, the economic dimension, including cost of living for the youth in various countries, and also encompasses issues like the future of jobs. And beyond the economic dimension, there are other dimensions, climate change, gender-related issues. I think these are all valid things that we can talk about in terms of socioeconomic concerns. Well, I guess one immediate thing is also the impact of the pandemic on youth, right? So I think in many countries it's becoming increasingly apparent that the COVID-19 pandemic has had outsized impacts on youth workers everywhere in the world, particularly for younger women, but also younger men. And I think this is one of the most immediate topics potentially for discussion in terms of how we can help marginalized worker groups like the youth fare better in the labor market and in the future. Besides that, of course, issues like cost of living. So things like housing, income levels, wage growth. These are obviously also important. And future of jobs. So there are various trends in the future of work for the youth that might warrant discussion. This include the increase in non-standard work, in various countries, and how we can sort of extend social protection to, to more non-standard work, especially in developing countries where social protection infrastructure may be lacking. And there are also other challenges, including the educational challenges. How do we prepare the youth for increasing demands of the future in terms of skills training, in terms of PECC, and also in terms of reducing inequality of education, especially in developing countries. Well, besides that, there's a variety of other things. So maybe Harris, you want to add on?
Thanks, Kelvin. Let me just pick up on, I think, your last point on preparing the youth for the future, right? I think there's 2 areas here where I feel I can comfortably comment on. The first is education, right? And it's not just about the existing workers, whether they're in the youth group or in the other segments of the demographic, to reskill and upskill to meet the demands of the future, but also the younger generation that's still in probably primary and secondary levels of education now, how would a university degree prepare them for the future? We know that, I think there was a report by LinkedIn published last year that most of the jobs that, what's this? Yeah, there's a study done by LinkedIn last year about how most of the future jobs require skills that we don't necessarily have yet or is being taught at university level, right? So this has raised a question among some of the policy thinkers here in Malaysia, whereby they are calling for increase in TVET, so technical skills-based education in lieu of the more formal university education. But at the industry level, there's also comments by employers saying that the graduates that, at least in Malaysia's case, that the universities are producing are ill-equipped to deal with the demands of the workforce, right? So this is one of the questions that's been playing on my mind for the past few years, is that what's the role of the university moving into the future? Should the university merely be this production line to create industry-ready graduates, or should the university have a more broader role to develop intellectually curious individuals that would benefit society in a larger perspective, right? So I hope someone can comment on this later on or not. But yeah, coming back to the other angle of the future of jobs, reskilling, upskilling, we know that's going to be an important thing. And perhaps there's a role for micro-credentials or lifelong learning elements to play a bigger role in society. I agree with the point raised earlier about how we need to balance gender representation better. I think in developing countries, the conversation has started for the past few years, but perhaps we should double down where we need on to address these issues. Besides that, let's see, wage growth is a problem as well here in Malaysia. We see that wages has not increased in parallel to rising cost of living. So I think that's, from my perspective at least, one of the pressing socio-economic issues for the youth. Yeah, I think I'll just end my comments there, and I look forward to the discussion to follow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harris and Kelvin, for your thoughts. Really good way to kickstart that conversation. What I might try to do now is to open it up to the floor for a wider discussion. And so would it be possible to, just for people to raise their hand if they've got something to say? So what we're trying to do is to get some solutions. You know, what are the ministries and government agencies in your country thinking about some of the problems that have just been raised? What are some of the things that are challenging that maybe there are possible solutions that are being worked on at the moment? And it would be a really good opportunity to share that with us to continue this conversation. So I see one hand's gone up already, that's Matthew. So Matthew, could you tell us the view from New Zealand, please?
Thanks, James. So I think there are a lot of issues, really great topics that that have just been raised, and I won't try and address all of them. But I think I'm perhaps reasonably well placed to talk about two, which is the role of universities in preparing students and graduates for the workforce, and also one of the topics on inequality, which is something that I think about a lot. On the first point about universities and preparing for job readiness, I mean, so I'm a lecturer, and so it's kind of an interesting role where, you know, we are thinking about the future of work and wanting to encourage our students to you know, develop the skills that they need for you know, for future jobs. But I think that there is also a very real tension between teaching very prescribed courses and providing an opportunity for students to explore, to do research, to develop, you know, analytical skills in a more independent capacity. And so one thing that we've seen at Victoria University of Wellington, for example, is the growth in taught masters courses. this has been a very positive thing because it's encouraged a lot of people to do courses on topics. So in the political science area, there are things like a Master of International Trade, which is an interdisciplinary one, Master of Master of Politics, Master of International Relations, and these courses so then draw on the courses that are offered in our department. But at the same time, the number of people doing those has increased, but the number of people doing more research-oriented master's courses has declined. And so there's a bit of a tension there where I think perhaps people are getting a more focused kind of set of skills, but losing out on some of the opportunities to do research. And I don't think it's clear that one is necessarily better than the other. Just on the income inequality and inequality issue in general, I just wanted to make a link to trade there by saying that one of the things that I focus on a lot in my work is the backlash against globalization. And one of the big ways that people have talked about this is in this perspective that a lot of people have lost out with economic globalization, that it's benefited a smaller group of people than was expected or promoted, and that we've got a lot of people who have seen job losses which they attribute to globalization, to trade agreements. And one thing that one impact this is having in New Zealand is that there was a really strong backlash against the Trans-Pacific Partnership when the US was still involved. And I think that there was a recognition by the government and by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade that the social license, as they call it, for negotiating trade agreements had been undermined. And so people no longer had the same trust, that trade agreements were a good thing, because they didn't see that benefits were being shared widely amongst different groups of society. And so I think that there's a very clear link there to the sort of policy options that are available to governments when, when society eventually kind of says, no, enough, we're not seeing the benefits from these things. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Really good. You've also managed to bring in a few other issues as well. Thank you for bringing up the trade issue. We've got a few hands up, which is really great. We've built up a lot of momentum already in the first few minutes. So I'll look, let's see, Sergio, would you like to say something from Mexico?
Yes, of course. Well, here in Mexico, our governmental agency, the Ministry of Labor, has very different priorities right now. For the last 25 years, Mexican labor market was very dependent upon NAFTA and the necessities of NAFTA, of course. And recently, a leftist government was elected here in Mexico, came into office, and they are raising a new policy that recognizes inequalities in the labor markets. And also there was a renegotiation of the NAFTA. We now have what we call the USMCA, which is a totally different trade agreement. And for example, in terms of labor, the United States and also Canada forced, well, not forced, but put pressure on the Mexican government in order to revise and increase wages, no? Especially in the manufacturing sector. And for the past 2 years, this has been the priority and the main concern of our governmental authorities. I think here in Mexico, the institutions that are coping better with these challenges of the future of jobs and the future of labor force are universities. Because universities have acknowledged, I think, better the challenges of not only AI, but also gender inequality, for example, and a lot of other topics. But I guess we are a little bit behind developed countries in this matter, because we have different priorities right now.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Sergio. It would be really good to get a view from ASEAN. Siti, you're based in Malaysia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to tell us what's happening in Malaysia, please?
Yeah, so one of the key concerns actually in Malaysia, I think, is actually the fact that because of the pandemic happened, like a whole generation of students are now left behind. And particularly, I think in the country, you see the division between the haves in terms of like the infrastructure to continue their studies with the have-nots. And I think that has like massive implications in terms of like the social mobility of one generation. Be it people who get basic education or people who are in secondary education or even in university. So I think this has like long-term implications on inequality for the country as a whole. But also, I also think in terms of like between countries as well. So Malaysia is comparatively to other countries is still quite a connected economy in terms of our digital infrastructure. So like in a more ASEAN perspective, like other countries that don't have that infrastructure might be left behind a lot more. So I think the conversation needs to move in terms of like how do we best assist countries in these situations to also like be part of the recovery process, and the kind of infrastructure that I think across countries we can share, so that there's not going to be like a generation in the region that is left behind. And I think this will really threaten our SDG goals to end poverty, which is like the first one. On top of that, I think someone mentioned about micro-credentials. I also think there's an opportunity here for cross-national work to make micro-credentials a little bit more attractive. So we see leaders in the region, for example, Singapore, have their own like skills for future Singapore, where a lot of people are taking micro-credentials, but it's, I think, relatively restricted to Singaporeans. So one thing that I think is can be useful to move forward is for other countries to tap into already existing resources and see how we can create like a regional network of micro-credential framework rather than individual countries. Because I think in the long term, workers are going to be a bit more mobile, and with the pandemic, I think the mobility only happens online. So I don't have to move to a different country. I can do the work here in my country for another client in the region, right? So thinking about how we consolidate, how we assess qualifications, for example, and how we learn and upskill workers and support lifelong learning in the region, I think could also be a direction in terms of like what to do next. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Siti. I noticed we've got Sally Parks-McClay have joined us. Sally, I think you joined just a little bit later, so if you don't mind just briefly introducing yourself and before you deliver your intervention, please. Sally?
Hi, sorry I was a bit late. I'm Sally, I'm from the Australian APEC Study Centre based at RMIT University in Melbourne. However, I've been based in another city for the majority of this year. I'm in Adelaide. I work closely with Aaron on a number of different types of projects, but primarily in capacity building on women's economic empowerment. So I've done a lot of work on improving gender data, looking at how to better support women-led SMEs to access global markets, as well as some other areas. But the issue I actually wanted to raise was about women's employment here in Australia during COVID. So women were part of a cohort of workers that were disproportionately affected by COVID due to the being overrepresented in casual employment rates or informal employment, as well as part-time. So when heavily, and also overrepresented in some of the most affected industries. So this affected young women, but also women all throughout the career. And a lot of the government support focused on youth. So young women were able to engage with that a little bit more, but women at the end of their career were kind of left out in the cold a little bit. The other thing that's really affected women's ability and engagement in the workforce is the increase in unpaid labour. Again, there's been a disproportionate uptake of, with everyone staying home more, there is a lot more unpaid labour in the home. But in terms of what's happening within the home in that gender divide, it's been falling more to women. So one of the ways that the Australian government, I know, has been trying to address this specific point is to gather more gender data to have better informed policy. So I know that the Australian Bureau of Statistics is about to release a time use survey to try and find out really how disproportionate that unpaid labour is within the home, and then use that to create better support. So I know one state here in Australia, they just made childcare free for a period of time, just so women could still engage in the workforce meaningfully instead of having to do childcare responsibilities if they had children at home. So yeah, that's one of the part of what's happening. I'll leave my colleague Aaron to talk more a bit about the university sector. He'll know a little bit more about that.
Thank you. So why don't we do that? Let's hear from Aaron. I know you've had your hand up for a while, so sorry for that delay, but over to you, please.
No problem at all. I just wanted to pick up on the education topic from, it feels like a while ago now. So RMIT, where our center is based, does try to promote what they call work integrated learning and try to bring in businesses to run industry challenges for university students. And so I've been closely involved in one which has MBA students work on a report throughout the semester that is then presented to the APEC Business Advisory Council. And so that gives them gives the students a bit of real world engagement along with the university courses. So I think as a model, we'd likely see universities start to work with companies a bit more and integrate some of those challenges into their course material, hopefully. I also wanted to just pick up on Matthew's points around the backlash to globalization. So I think often when it's discussed, this question is raised of whether is it trade or is it automation that's really driving a lot of this disruption and sort of technology development. And a counter to that are people like Richard Baldwin, who argues that that they can't be separated. We got to think of globalization and robotics, what he calls globotics, as sort of a joint phenomenon. And I think because both of those issues are impacting people's sort of livelihoods at the same time, it becomes even more important that we find ways of addressing them, because we've seen how the issue of fairness, I think, is a very sort of deep, moral value that people have, and and it's being sort of politically weaponized in order to serve political goals. So, for example, the Trump administration has been putting certain words around free and fair trade in all of its communications, and I think we need a better solution to this issue of fairness, both within countries and between countries as well. If we really,
Thank you. Yeah, no, cheers for that. Dongwoo, you've had your hand up for a while as well. Can you share with us some of your thoughts? Have you got any response for Aaron and some of his questions?
Yeah, it's kind of related. So I wanted to touch on the university aspect a little. So there is definitely a conflict between teaching the graduates how to get a job and also teaching university graduates to be thoughtful citizens and being responsible out there in society. Especially, I'm thinking about in context of Canada, we've been seeing a lot of top-tier universities creating their own public policy schools. Some of them have the capacity, some of them don't. but they're getting pushed towards developing programs where students would supposedly be able to get a better job or find a job after graduation. And those schools are charging upwards of $30,000, $40,000 a year, close to MBA or law school cost. And what I'm concerned about here is that with the proliferation of MOOCs and internet learning, especially accelerated after the pandemic, knowledge is becoming more accessible. But and at the same time, we are not talking about the more social element of university education or the soft skills that we gain from university education. And for those who are able to afford that kind of in-person university education, it's going to become more costly and less accessible, because the justification will be, well, if you could take a MOOC for $5,000, why would you pay $30,000 to go to university? So I think that's going to create further divergence. And this is also critical in context of digitalization, because we're talking about the skills that is needed, but also there is a big issue with how people engage with technology. You know, there's I think the biggest issue that we're facing now is the tech literacy, where people don't really engage with the ethical issues about providing data or consequences of providing data to bigger companies, and or even how to address that. And I think that is intimately tied to the sort of critical thinking element of university education that's getting pushed aside. And then like a minor point on the issue of skilled workers and migration, Canada has been really successful at attracting skilled workers in areas of machine learning, computing science, software development through its immigration program. And as a Canadian, I think that's an exceptional thing to have, and it's good for our national interest. But when you see research reports on the state of AI or the state of digital economy, these individuals who have the skills are being seen as an advantage to be gained by a nation in a red ocean competition. So I'm just thinking it's good for Canada, but is it good for the world? And I think that's a question that we have to think about. Like, is because attracting talent is brain drain for another country. So
no, excellent point. It's really good to be able to hear what some of the symptoms and issues and problems are, but it's also good to discuss possible solutions. So if anyone out there has got some of the answers to some of the questions that have been posed today, really looking forward to hear that. On my screen, I see a few people with the Sonia. You've had your hand up for a while now, so I'll give you an opportunity. Have you got any answers for us?
I don't have any answers, but I wish I did. But addressing still the education side of things, I think when we're looking at the question that Harris posed to us, which is, are universities failing, or should they be more of a conduit for graduates into work, or should they be fostering an intellectual place of people to think? I think we're already in the fostering a place for people to think. Well, particularly in New Zealand, it's not that there is a lot of work-ready graduates heading out into the workforce, and I think that it is very limited to look at it from a university standpoint. It really needs to be an education standpoint. At the moment, again, in New Zealand, it's quite centered that everyone is mainly pushed towards university, but that lends to a lot of underutilization. For example, a lot of entry-level jobs are filled by university graduates, but you do not need a 3 or 4 year degree in business to be an administrative assistant, which unfortunately is a lot of the work for people in their first years of their career, but they don't need to be doing that. They have more knowledge than that, and it is being wasted. And also in New Zealand, we are undergoing something called the reform of vocational education. So even our technical colleges, which are more like mathematical applied skills to engineering or builders skills and things like that, even they have been identified as not producing the skills needed in the workplace. And this isn't just an issue of businesses being able to find people. This is an issue of a country being able to achieve what it needs to. So by saying, is this a university problem, is I think making it too small. It's very much what is high school doing to prepare people for the workplace? What are we teaching our children in primary school about the world of work? Because at the moment, if you ask kids what they want to be, it's still doctor, lawyer, fireman. That's what they're limited to, and that isn't what the world is at the moment.
Good.
So I think if I was to hazard a solution, I would say we would need to address the whole curriculum, not just at university.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, you're in Hong Kong, right? It'll be good to hear some of your views. What's the education scene looking like there? And what are some of the hopes and prospects for young people?
All right, thank you, James. Actually, what I was thinking was not really limited to Hong Kong, but I guess I don't think it's in general. But yeah, I mean, education similarly is a really big problem here in my eyes. I look at it as an institutional factor in society itself. So for example, people are calling for the so-called interdisciplinary approach in teaching and education. So a really quick example is like we are studying law, but there are legal technologies and they're subject to a lot of statistical things that we don't want to learn. But there are a lot of educational institutions like tertiary. If in Hong Kong, I mean, different unis are different. Some universities in Asia opt for the US approach, which is more scientific, but some Asian institutions are more close to the European and UK approach, which is more theoretical. So the problem is, how does government policy play a part in do an interaction between them? Like even if a government or you guys, policymakers, you guys are all aware of this kind of situation, but how much of a say that you have in influencing what strategies that education as an institution can do? And this, I think this also extends to a wider perspective. Like even for jobs, I think we just don't concern about whether technology will replace job itself, but the wider social context would involve other things like, for example, fertility. Like the case in Japan, like some women go for job interviews and they will declare that, don't worry, I'm not going to get pregnant. So it considered the very nature of employment issue in Asia, which is very different from the UK style. And I think technology would be good to play a part in shaping these kind of issues. Yeah, but yeah, not really in Hong Kong focus.
Okay, thank you. It's useful to have a broader view anyway, and that leads me to a sort of angle that we're looking for, is that sort of regional solutions, and whether it's in addressing the digital divide or income disparity or whatever it is. Does anyone have any thoughts on what can be done regionally? Maybe Nan Hao, do you have any thoughts? I mean, China's doing a lot regionally, for example, with the Belt and Road Initiative and other forms of outreach, beyond just China. Can you offer any thoughts on regional solutions or regional ways of addressing some of the problems that we mentioned today?
Well, I would like to answer that question in two parts. The first part is to share China's experiences. The other is to try to probe some potential ways within the China's regional approach. So the first, first of all, I would like to respond to Aaron's question, whether trade or automation that takes away the jobs. I think it depends, because between the countries in the upstream and the lower string of the industry chains or trade chains, I think jobs definitely would move from upstream countries, like for example, US to China. But of course, also between China and ASEAN countries, some of ASEAN countries, the jobs would move from China to ASEAN countries, which is exactly happening now. But another dimension I want to add that is based on China's experiences, particularly in the era of the COVID-19, is that in the coastal manufacturing hubs in China, previously the coastal provinces, these manufacturing hubs, they normally would attract the laborers, like peasant workers from the inner provinces in China to come to the coastal areas. But due to the COVID-19, so some of the cities are locked down and the peasant workers are unable to travel to the coastal areas to work. So that's why they introduced the automation. And in this timing, the automation really takes away the jobs. But due to the Chinese government's efforts, things are not that much worse because the Chinese government sees such kind of AI or big data as kind of opportunity to launch the precisely targeted poverty alleviation program. So they leverage the big data and also AI to precisely match the demands in the cities, in urban areas of the consumers and produces, and also it's like agricultural products in the rural areas. So now the peasant workers, particularly the young peasant workers, they don't have to move to coastal areas. They can stay in the inner provinces and simply just work on their farms. And that is provides a lot of opportunities, job opportunities for them. And the other thing is regarding education. So I'm not sure whether you noticed the recent news, which is the recent establishment of the World Alliance of MOOC. So the Chinese Tsinghua University is heading this alliance. So the MOOC, which stands for the Massive Open Online Courses, that really breaks the barriers of the education. So previously there's kind of like a closed university system for the high-ranking universities in China, which is very competitive for most of the Chinese students. Now, these universities, they open their gates, they open their campus to offer online courses, so more people can get higher quality education and even sometimes get certificates from that. And that would make them to be more competitive in the job markets. So to talk about China's regional approach, so for example, the BRI, even though many people simply just understand it, which is an infrastructure-based initiative, which is not true, it also has a kind of a Silk Road dimension, which is a digital Silk Road dimension, which is focusing on about leveraging the big data, AI, to facilitate Tibet, the vocational education, particularly in some of the ASEAN countries, like CLMV countries, to help them to be more digital savvy. And the other is the HERES approach. So the Chinese governments also, along with a lot of HERES professionals, HERES companies, they also do this kind of aids and also bilateral mechanisms to aid these countries in terms of public health. So this is also happening during the COVID-19 period. And I also would like to respond to Mr. Do Kim. He mentioned about some regional approach. I think like this kind of regional approach is very important, probably particularly for this big data and also this AI era job security issues, because China, Japan, also EU countries, they have been doing this kind of initiative globally, but we haven't seen anything in regional scale, like in Southeast Asia or East Asia region or Asia Pacific region. So probably this is a time window for PECC or APEC countries to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, thank you. That's really comprehensive. I appreciate you've managed to tie 3 or 4 different themes into your 5-minute intervention. So really appreciate that. Just looking at the time, we've got about 8 minutes left, which is, time's gone by very quickly. And we've got a couple more people. So I've got Nur Sazali and Julia. If I could ask you to speak maybe for 2 minutes each, would that be okay? Could you squeeze all your comments into 2 minutes, and then we might have time for a couple more exchanges. So, Nur, if you would.
Deliver my comments in 2 minutes. Very broadly, like number one, automations, right? We often forget that you also create jobs, but the problem is prediction is always inaccurate, especially, in 2020, nobody could have expected that this is happening. KRI, Kazana Research Institute, has done analysis on looking at past data on what percentage of workforce will be impacted by automations or IR4. And then this is aligned with the World Bank report, so we found that over 50% of the workforce will be affected. Initially, we thought that only the lower skill would be replaced, but based on our data, it's actually mid-skill. And the mid-skill make up the most of our workforce. We often talk about tertiary education, maybe because we all have tertiary education, we are all tertiary educated, but the fact of the matter is like most of our workforce has semi-skills and also don't have tertiary education, so we cannot leave them behind. And then this comes back to the idea of firming up our social protections. There have been issues raised on fairness, whether the benefits trickle down, and then this is when we need to include more people in the social protection system. When shock happens, there's a net that can catch them, and I feel that this is really, really important. It's not fair to talk to tell primary schools, secondary schools, or universities to prepare for the future works. It's a lifelong learning. This is when social protections comes in. And I feel that I would love to learn more from Mexico's. They have been cited in the literature, some of the lessons learned, maybe from developed countries, like how do we include more and more, if not all, the systems. And then thirdly, on the regionals efforts or solutions, I feel that data sharing is really important. Nowadays, people look at data as a goal or something that to be sold. I feel this is highly problematic. They take our data and they use it for free. There needs to be, I feel that rethinking of this idea of like sharing data, not broad data, but we want more granular data so that we can understand what's happening. Only when we understand what's happening, then we can figure out what's the next way forward. Because I feel that at this moment we have a very little understanding of what is happening.
Okay, thank you, Nia. I was just thinking that, it's one of the things about these gatherings is to exchange perspectives. And if this was in person, would be having very interesting conversations, during coffee break or on the sidelines. And unfortunately, it's not possible in this situation. But what I would encourage you to do is that over the next few days is still try and keep in contact with each other, if not through the LinkedIn network. I think you've all been invited to join the LinkedIn group. That is a way to stay connected and to ask each other questions on the sidelines and to just follow up on some of the conversations that we've had today. Julia, you've got 2 minutes. So if you could just throw in your comments, and then we'll see if we've got time for a bit of a wrap up. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And I think my comments will sort of echo a lot of what Nur previously just said, and I think some comments by other speakers too. And I think I just want to push back on the sort of utilitarian view of education, in terms of like education is supposed to produce skills and match it to a certain job. So I don't think it's simply a correlation of skills matching, because as Nur said, there's a lot of things that change, and so this constant changing is going to happen well beyond education, and the sort of reskilling, retooling of even educated workers and less educated workers is going to happen anyways. And the disadvantage of this sort of utilitarian mindset too is that as like a lot of jobs are replaced by automation and digitalization, we sort of kind of put less value on important skills that like a lot of people have highlighted. So what is human value, or like how are we gonna coexist with technology, and all of these sort of lesser valued professions or disciplines might fall behind when we actually need them. And the third, I think, disadvantage of this utilitarian view, as well as in terms of like international engagement, if we keep thinking about international education or education abroad as just simply to advance economically or to compete, then we kind of remove ourselves the opportunity to learn and engage in a genuine way with other countries and sort of see things from their perspective. So I think a bigger question for us is really just what we value, what sort of things we aspire to, and thinking about those deeper questions when simply like instead of simply attributing skills to an end product. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Julia. The whole university question, at least for us in New Zealand at the moment, because we're in lockdown, our borders are closed. We aren't getting any new students from overseas, and that's a problem. Is that the same for universities across the region as well? Are your borders closed to receiving students? I see a lot of people. Dongwoo, did you want to comment? I saw you nodding your head, and just feel free to speak up. I mean, what are some of the challenges around education, basically, just going forward over the next 12 months? What are the main challenges?
I mean, like, because of what was happening in the United States politically, Canada was supposed to be a beneficiary, but practically we've been having a lot of challenges because of the pandemic. Student visa issuing, it has been delayed. And in case of graduate students who are coming in from abroad, there were some legal issues where they could take courses from abroad, but they couldn't work as TAs or RAs because they were technically not in Canada, so therefore they couldn't work. So there are those little like technical issues that's creating huge problems for students, and also some of the more like sensitive issues where a lot of seminars they had to come up with guidelines in order to address some of the censorship issues that might be more pertinent for specific economies, and definitely like the environment felt a little more chilled than before in terms of discussion.
Okay, we've got about 1 or 2 minutes before we have to wrap up. I guess this is an opportunity for anyone just to have the last word. Did anyone was burning to say something but never got the opportunity? I'll now put the floor out to anyone who would like to basically give the last word before we close. Darcy, is that you? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you for your chance for my voice. We want to respond to the topic which talked before. We also recall on the issue which is the future of the job and job security. Because after the COVID-19 pandemic, the fresh graduates, their digital ability are not capacity the digital market. For instance, I major in law department. There's a new system of adapting and replacing juries of the lawsuit by using the big data and another artificial system. So, but it arises another things like another problem, which is the personal privacy issue. Yeah. How to collect this data, and are these data should be collected? Like some people who don't have enough mature knowledge of what is privacy and the value of the personal data. Another problem is that though we have this data, but out of the education, not training how to apply it from my experience. So there will be a serious issue to follow up the digital gap, especially in the traditional business and education. So it will be another social power, like people who own the digital knowledge. If they didn't follow the regulatory, it will generate the new risk, like social criminal or such an international crimes. And it will affect the younger generation because this situation will spread by the social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Very interesting question. Unfortunately, we won't have any time to address it today, but plenary session 5 on Wednesday, 16th December, there will be a session on the kind of issues that you've just raised. So what I suggest is that you have a think about reframing what you've just said into maybe 2 or 3 talking points that you can use as an intervention to the panelists. You want to be able to make it a bit more succinct. You don't need to explain too much because everyone in the room will probably be familiar with the situation anyway, but you might want to use one example just to set the context and then ask your question directly to the panelists. Okay, so you can follow up on that. And it's the same advice for everyone else around the room today. There's been a lot of questions that we couldn't address in this roundtable ourselves, but there will be people who can speak expertly to it over the next 2 or 3 days. And so, like I said, if you can frame your intervention up into something short and sweet, and then raise it as a question during the Q&A session of those dialogues. So with that, thank you very much for making the time to join with us today on this PECC 2 simulation. I hope it's piqued your interest and your enthusiasm for these kinds of exchanges. I know that over the next 2 or 3 days, there'll be lots of interesting subjects that we'll look forward to your contribution in. And then, we'll be wrapping up again with that special meeting with the, what do you call it, the last plenary session, isn't it? The standing committee meeting. That will be a way to be able to think a bit more forward about how the next gen and track 2 can be used more positively and productively in the future. So thank you again for this opportunity to facilitate this. Back to you, Harris and Calvin. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I think there's not much from our side before handing it back to Dr. Juwita. Calvin, is there anything you want to say?
Nope, I think we've covered everything.
All right, Dr. Juwita, please.
Thank you so much to the facilitators and also the next gen participants who were actively involved in discussions over many, many topics. I'm so sorry that we don't have enough time to cover all of your inputs and all of your views. But again, as James mentioned, we have the next 2 days to talk about those issues, and we really highly encourage you to speak up with your interventions during the general meeting. So we will conclude our session for today, and we look forward to your participation again over the next 2 days in the general meeting. And then we will meet again on the 17th at 9 o'clock in the morning to talk a bit about what our impressions were and maybe to work on our memorandum to be presented at the PECC to the PECC members. So I thank you again, and please don't forget to use the LinkedIn platform to share your views, ask questions, and keep going with the networking. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.